Hey, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Ellen Ernstberger, and I will be your host today. We'll give folks a few minutes to hop in here. I'm joining from the Louisville, Kentucky area. Would love to see in the chat where people are tuning in from. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and get started then. Thanks so much, everybody. I am here with Brandon Woelfel, and
Hi
he is going to
guys.
be taking us through a super exciting workflow for how he edits his cinematic portraits inside of Lightroom. Brandon, would you love to introduce yourself?
Yeah, what's up? My name is Brandon. I'm a freelance portrait photographer based in Brooklyn. I grew up on Long Island, so I'm kind of very familiar with the New York area. I went to school for computer art, so I'm kind of well versed within the kind of Adobe Lightroom, Photoshop gear sphere. And yeah, I love editing. My work is kind of primarily based around using kind of cinematic, moody lighting. This is some of my work here that you can kind of see. This is just on my Instagram, which is just at Brandon Woelfel. And yeah, as you can see, my favorite thing to shoot is portraits. And a lot of these people across my images have become just like dear friends of mine that I met through social media. But yeah, I love editing within both Photoshop and Lightroom. And I'm excited to sort of get into Lightroom today because I don't really think I have shared much like online about my sort of Lightroom workflow. I definitely share a lot within Photoshop, but I'm kind of excited to go through also the updates, but then just kind of share my workflow. So yeah, this is some of my work, and we're gonna kind of dive into a shoot of mine that I just recently did that I haven't really like shared too much anywhere. And I want to kind of bring you guys through the shoot itself and kind of how I prepared for it, and then get into like editing those images. And then, of course, talking about those super exciting Lightroom updates as well. So we can just dive into actually the sort of mood board for the shoot. So I'm going to go ahead and open Adobe Bridge right now. And we're going to go to review mode and kind of go through um, the selects from the shoot and also just like how I prepared. So I kind of always start out my shoots by going on Pinterest. That's sort of my like main inspiration for finding different lighting setups. That's kind of where I base a lot of my inspiration off of is different lighting setups. So this is just a screenshot of like a bunch of different Pinterest images that I kind of created a board for. And this is again how I just start right off the bat. Um, and then I can kind of from there start to dive into dissecting different images and where I want them to be across like the timeline of the shoot. So we can now move on to like the little mood board that I created. So again, these are just screenshots of other people's images, but then this is a more like kind of cohesive board. And as you can see on the top, I included like the location of the shoot, the date, who's going to be joining us, and then I divided these two different looks into different sectors. I feel like I always like to sort of go with a sort of clean hair and makeup look to start. And in this case, I was shooting my new friend Myra, and she is actually going to be on a Broadway show soon. So we were taking some headshots. We were kind of getting some images for both of our sort of portfolios. And again, we just wanted to start with a really clean headshot and then build off of that. So I will use just Adobe Express for something like this, just throwing a bunch of different images that I found inspiration from into a little board that I can sort of also share with the people that are coming along on the shoot. Because I feel like when you have all these ideas in your brain, you can't really formulate them, or the best way to do it is to share what you're thinking so that everyone who's involved can sort of get a good idea of what you want so that they can also, bring in their expertise, whether their hair, makeup, styling into the shoot. So I love working with different teams. A lot of the time, again, these are just friends that I've made through social media that have these expertise like hair and makeup. So again, that first look, we started with just some studio clean headshots and then worked it into something a little bit more edgier. And we can kind of go through some of those images that I shot. And again, these are all unedited because we're going to get into some of those edits today in Lightroom. But yeah, this is the just studio space that I shot. I was trying to find an image of the rooftop because there was a rooftop on this space. That was like the reason why I booked it because I wanted to do some outdoor stuff. I kind of love getting variety within my shoot. So if I'm able to, you know, have the space, the model, the team for a few hours, I really do my best to try and shoot a ton of different looks. So these images that I'm going to go through right now, um, I shot all of these within probably like 4.5 hours. Just kind of like it's definitely like a hectic shoot day when I am shooting because I'm not shooting every single day. So when I do shoot, I just want to get the most out of it, you know? So these are just some clean headshots that I took of Myra. Um, just used a large softbox with the grid and some natural light coming in from the side as well. Again, just super simple. And then moved it into same hair and makeup, just switched on a different shirt outfit and incorporated that same sort of softbox grid towards the foreground, but then incorporated different side lights and a backlight as well moving through some of these. And these are all in JPEG. I like to shoot in JPEG and RAW when I shoot, just to sort of get both. I do like to preview my images in JPEG. I feel like sometimes it's faster, but then I do have to deal with, the excessive storage. But yeah, moving through some of these, bringing in some more sort of creative lighting here. Just keeping the same hair and makeup, just switching up the outfit. This was literally just a blazer that I brought from my own closet. So I always just recommend to like find what you have and make it work. And then this is where we shot on the rooftop. And these are some of the images that I wanted to edit today. This was literally like I honestly will be posting some of the behind the scenes of this, but it was like really a hot mess trying to get this fabric to look nice. Like I only did get a few usable images out of these setups because it was windy, like the fabric was not we basically created like a live sail and the wind was just taking that everywhere. It was really a mess, but I'm glad we got some images out of it. And then we finished with that sort of edgier sort of makeup on this fire escape that the space provided. So again, we were able to get a lot of variety out of this shoot, and I'm excited to kind of bring you guys along on some of that editing. So we're gonna.
Awesome.
Oh, thank you.
I'm already impressed. They're already beautiful, so I can't wait to see how you edit them.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I guess we can jump into Lightroom and waste no time here. So yeah, these are those sort of images with that fabric that I really love. And personally, when I'm shooting, I definitely try to be mindful of little things that are in the background or the corner and try to get rid of those things as much as I can while on location. But sometimes it's not, there's so many moving parts when you're shooting that it's hard to kind of be mindful of all of it. So there's definitely a few things you can see up here, like I don't know I think part of the fabric must have been a little messed up. Again, the wind was just really doing its thing. So again, just that's why we have these editing programs. We can be able to sort of morph and sort of blend things together that we normally wouldn't be able to while on a shoot. And then we have one sec. We have the this little like situation right here that we want to get rid of. So let's just start with using generative fill to kind of get rid of this. So we can just kind of circle through that and see what we can make out of it. Oops, one second. There it goes. Just trying to center my mouse is being a little funky. One sec. Um, just trying to center my canvas with my Mac. Give me one sec. Okay, we'll just go with that. Oh, okay, sorry. But yeah, we can generate fill that, and then we can also go ahead and do that in the corner, sort of removing that as we please, going ahead and removing that. And I feel like all of these different elements really do bring an image to make it look way more professional. And I love that these tools are being, implemented more into Lightroom because again, like I started out using Photoshop, so I um, am definitely I guess more familiar with Photoshop in terms of what it does. But again, these tools like generative fill that I love and know, I'm so glad they're kind of making their way into Lightroom as well. But yeah, I think we can move forward with starting through with going over some presets. So these are some of I always start to like I love going through the recommended ones as well. I feel like within the way that I sort of edit my images, I love to. I'm not the best at dealing with curves. So I definitely do like to start with presets and then build off from there. So I think I know having these recommended presets is amazing, but I'm going to go through just a few of mine and see sort of what's looking good there. And this image has a lot of like red, so it's definitely a little bit tough to edit reds for the most part. So um, I know a lot of these presets probably won't look the best, but I know that there's one, I might have passed it. Um, where is it? Oh yeah, I feel like this preset Muse always looks really nice with that sort of pop of red. So I'm gonna go with that and then decrease the power just to sort of, I want to build off this myself. I don't want to necessarily, just go with it and then be done. I want to really make this image my own. So we're gonna bring that down just a bit, bring it over there. And then from there, we can sort of start to work with it. Um, and I love that when we're going through, um, it's detecting her and we can kind of make her pop as well. So if we click on her, that's detected. And then you can see that it's sort of creating all of these different elements from and detecting her skin, her eyebrows. But we're gonna select her as her own person and then create a mask from there so we can really make her pop. So I'm gonna go ahead and just boost up the exposure a bit, go through and add some contrast, decrease the highlights. And I am very like meticulous when I go about my editing. I just kind of like to go through literally every slider. And again, that's why I take so long to edit sometimes, but I love the idea of Lightroom being so amazing for batch editing specifically because I truly spend so much time. So it's helpful to have little moments like that to be able to um, batch edit. But I kind of want to warm up this image a bit. So going through the temperature and the tint. And again, this is just sort of affecting her. It's not affecting the entirety of the image just yet. We're going to get into that as well. And then if we zoom in, we can make her a little bit sharper as well.
While you're doing that, Brandon, a question from the chat.
For
People
sure.
are curious, what kind of camera are you using?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I shoot with Nikon. So I sort of got started through my grandfather. He was a photographer, and when I started shooting, I had like no idea what sort of, you know, it almost feels like a starter Pokemon when you're like deciding the camera because you almost feel like you gotta like stick with that because when you start investing into all these lenses and all this gear, and it starts to get really expensive, you really want to, choose a starter camera that can do the best things that you want to do. So I shoot with currently my current setup is the Nikon Z8, and then for this, I believe I shot with the 70 to 200 millimeter f 2.8 lens, and I also love the 24 to 70. So 24 to 70 and 70 to 200 are definitely go-tos for mine.
Awesome.
But now we're starting to edit on the sort of entirety of the image. So going through and making little tweaks again to that whole image and not just her as a mask. And I'm just decreasing highlights And this is the, I guess, the power of shooting within RAW is being able to bring down those highlights. It was a really bright day. There was some kind of cloud coverage, but what I did to combat that was bring in a flash. So these images were actually shot with flash, and I'm actually not the biggest flash user. I feel like a lot of my sort of like photography education videos and behind the scenes that I share, I'm a lot of the time editing with, or sorry, shooting with continuous light. So I will definitely use flash when I need to, but and this was sort of within that sort of range where I felt like I needed to use flash because it was such a bright day. Just going through the color mixer here, and because there again there's so much red, I'm just kind of going through each of these um, and getting the reds. I feel like editing reds is a little difficult because also it starts to blend in with skin tones as well. So just being really mindful that when I'm making these adjustments, also the skin is not looking too unrealistic from how I would like it. Um, And I'm a big proponent of sort of zooming in and out of my images because I feel like you're almost like, for me, I almost feel like sometimes I'm like painting an image. So it really helps to be able to like, how when like painters are supposed to like turn their canvas and step back, like sometimes I feel like that really helps. A lot of the time I also like will start to edit one image and then come back to it and just see kind of what the difference is. Also, starting to look at images within different lighting in person. Like I wouldn't recommend totally like editing outside in the direct sun. But sometimes when I'm editing with at night and it's like you feel like you can see like every little color. So again, just editing images and then coming back to it when um, you can is the best. So I used to when I started photography and I was very consistent on Instagram, I would try to post like every single night at the exact time. And I feel like for me that would start to create some images that I wasn't super proud of because then I would almost like look at it the next day and realize like I'm like I feel like maybe would have changed some things around. So now I'm definitely um more of someone who will sit and sort of wait on an image and look at it in a few, actually like a few days in a row and then finally share it or post it or things like that.
It's a good recommendation. I'll think about that the next time I post my new Instagram carousel.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely helps to kind of come back to an image, and I've definitely learned that through um, just doing photography for years and years. Okay, I feel like I've gotten this in the colors to a point where I'm starting to like it. We can sort of go in and crop this because that is always something that I feel like cropping an image really changes up, again, the entirety of it. So I'm just going to go in and it could be cool also to kind of crop out that sky to make it look almost like more all-encompassing in a way. So just again, being really mindful of your crop and like what it's doing for your image. I feel like it's very, um, natural to just be like, okay, this image is a little off center and crooked, so I'm just gonna naturally skew it. But I would suggest getting really experimental with your crops, especially when you're shooting again like landscapes and portraits. I think it's a really fun way to um, walk away with a really cool image. So again, I feel like that looks way better in my opinion of just cropping in and really focusing in on that red fabric. But now let's see. I think we could do is we can go ahead um, and copy this and then paste it onto another image to see sort of what we're working with. Because I try my best to sort of like shoot images similarly in terms of the like lighting and composition and stuff like that. But I feel like a lot of the times I do end up sort of having to edit an image from scratch just based on sort of working with different lighting and stuff like that. But I think what we could do, I wanted to edit one of these images as well from this shoot because This was a kind of tough one for me. I think the colors are so vibrant and bright that it was definitely a tough one to play with. So we can look at the before and after here, and this is just a sort of like camera raw sort of edit. So I didn't really apply um, any presets to this. This is just playing around. I didn't apply like any curves or anything. I just played around with the colors, and that's sort of what we arrived at with this. So I can kind of show you guys how I went about that by editing one of these images, because I feel like I got my start shooting a lot of these sort of really bright, sort of like neon images, and I feel like a lot of people were curious how to really bring down, say you're shooting a concert and the visuals are super bright. They're really blue, and it almost starts has an image starting to look washed out in a way, like this versus this. I feel like um, you can really find those colors within what you shot and really bring them out. And of course, that's why I love editing. I went to school, I think I already said this, but I went to school for computer art. So that is like my favorite thing is just being able to bring back colors within a photo that I really pictured and like sort of envisioned when I was shooting. But we can go ahead and start to just increase the brightness. And I feel like you guys will see like when I edit, I sort of just go through and just play with the slider like a million times like this. And I'm very much not set in my ways in terms of if I do make a change to one of the sliders, I'm always down to like come back to it and um, just making sure I'm not stuck in sort of an edit. And that's why I love um, like non-destructive ways of editing. I think it's super important for photographers like us. So we're gonna just keep going through this edit. And I feel like a big part of these images that are really bright and colorful is the white balance. So I do my best while on my shoots to sort of capture my white balance to how I envision it. I feel like it just makes me want to shoot more. If, an image is not how you're looking or not how you envisioned it while on location, I feel like I don't get as excited and I don't take as many photos. And then when I go sit down to edit, I'm like, wait, I actually like these when I start to apply my edits. So I think it's super important to kind of capture images with your white balance in mind while on location. But I love the idea of being able to, again, control that. So just going through and being really tedious here. But this is really just what I do within my workflow is just go through every single slider for the most part and just kind of play around and see what effects it does. And sometimes it's the smallest of things. Like for this, you can see in sort of the top left side of her head, like it's controlling that sort of color there. And that still matters within your images, little things like that. So definitely don't discount little details. I think a really cool part about being a photographer is that we are super almost detail oriented and we can get really detailed with the smallest things that maybe people don't notice, but I feel like I know that we definitely notice it ourselves. So just going through.
This is so great, Brandon. For me, as more of a hobbyist photographer, as I'm developing my Lightroom skills, I always feel a little intimidated because I have this expectation that photographers go in and they know exactly what sliders they're going to move, what adjustments they're going to make. So
Mhm.
seeing you work through this is confidence inspiring, that a lot of it is just based on getting the look that you want, and it changes from time to
Totally.
time.
I love that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I always kind of like, I know the way that I edit is definitely almost sometimes not realistic for some people because I am sort of going through every single thing and playing with it. But for me, I think that's the part that I love is kind of crafting an image from scratch. And of course, we have all these presets we can play with. But and I what I tend to do is sort of go through these adjustments and then again in Photoshop or Lightroom, and then I'll apply that sort of preset over. But this is really what I do for starting out an image is just go through and make these really to me important little changes within these images. And I love this color grading tab as well for just being able to really combat different colors. So we're in the highlights tab right now. And of course, there is a lot of sort of pink going on in this image, so we can kind of bring that up to maybe the greens or the blues over here to sort of bring that back down a little bit and sort of make it a little bit more, I guess, realistic. Obviously, we're not going for like realistic skin tones when there's like all these crazy colors, but we do want to again bring down um, that sort of pink a little bit. So I'm loving sort of that green to combat that.
We do have a question in the a comment in the chat from
Yeah.
Arabella. She says that editing and
Hello.
retouching is such a journey. How do you stay learning and growing throughout your editing process?
I love that. Also, hi, Arabella. But I think for me, it's part about discovering like new tools. Like I think within all these updates that we get, I'm able to like push my workflow that much further. But I don't know. I think it almost comes from kind of crafting new inspiration before a shoot. Like I feel like it all starts within the like pre-process that affects my edit. Like this was very much planned. Like this image, for example, like I was gonna show you this earlier, I forgot, but I have this little notebook that I will bring with me on my shoots that are more like planned out like this. And I'll usually draw like um a little sort of lighting setup. Just this helps me to just bring with me on my shoot. So I'm not like usually sharing with this everyone like look at my little drawing, but it just helps me. So with this image, I think yeah, I have, this was sort of the basis off of what we're looking at here. So I had some, and of course, when you're actually shooting, it changes. So within my inspiration for this exact image, I had like, I wanted to shoot on a backdrop with natural light and this little star projector that I brought. We ended up morphing it a little bit, but I think within, to go back to her question, I feel like the way that I sort of edit and the way that I sort of am able to push that is from shooting different types of images and experimenting with all different types of lighting. So starting with, I started out shooting at all times of day, not even knowing how that would affect my images. And now I'm just, I think, more mindful of if I shoot at night, I'm gonna have to maybe denoise my images a bit more. And I feel like that in itself just sort of pushes me in my sort of process and helps me learn sort of new tools for sure. Um, but yeah, I think from here, we can go into some more masking, kind of make her sort of pop from this backdrop. And also we could create a mask for the background as well and sort of affect that as its own sort of separate thing. So we've sort of separated the two. And like even I know this is literally the mask creating that red, but I almost like the idea of like changing up the color. So I think we could go ahead and play around with that. So I'm selecting on that background mask and going through and oh, I guess it is not selected. One second. This is the, oh wait, I'm gonna play with the background. See, I might have to create a new one here. Sorry about that. Okay, so from there we can now select the background. So playing through with those purples, like I feel like the purple is really saturated. So I kind of want to bring that down and maybe affect it more towards the greens again. And I feel like this is where just knowledge of like complementary colors really comes in because we're able to know that sort of a reddish vibe. Green will combat that and like bring it down. With purple, it's more of like, I feel like it's like a yellow, also in the sort of green category. But I almost love how that blue is looking. I feel like it's really sort of complementing some of what's going on in the front. So I'm just gonna do the subject once again. So that's on, I think I created a like dual mask on over there. So we're just creating a separate one here, bringing in some of those little exposure moments. And then I always compensate with boosting exposure by sort of decreasing the highlights and then adding some contrast to our images as well. Cool. I love how that's looking. I did want to go through an image from um, a totally different shoot just to show you guys how we're able to really the new Lightroom updates with being able to take a group shot and really focus in on playing around with that. So I have this image here that I did on a shoot a while ago. And it's funny because I don't really do a lot of like dual people shoots. So this was actually a little bit tough for me to find at first. But we can go in here and see how it's sort of divided both of them, which is just like amazing. And we can go in and specifically play with again, different parts of her, but I just love how we're able to again separate um, those people. And I believe this also, I don't know, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but this came to mobile recently. But
Did.
I think yeah, I think I wanted to dive into also some landscapes. So as you could see here on the left, I sort of divided up our photos today within landscapes and portraits. And I feel like you can see how much I love portraits by just how many I included here, because there is literally almost 70 portraits and then only like 20 landscapes. So I'm definitely not the biggest landscape photographer, but I feel like within the city that I live in New York, I feel like there's so many opportunities for me to be able to shoot really different, interesting architecture. And also, because I grew up on Long Island, there are different moments like this sunflower moment, and things like this in the fall that I can sort of get the best of both worlds and be able to go back to Long Island where my family lives and be able to find different scenes like this, which I feel like make for some really great images. Um, but I did want to dive into the latest landscape update that came to Lightroom. And I wanted to pick an almost like really tricky image like this because I know there's like a lot going on. And also it's spring. I feel like, it just made sense to kind of go with an image like this. But we're going to go over here and choose our new landscape tool here. And as you can see, it does such a good job. And again, this sort of image is there's so much going on. So obviously, and also I think I either shot this at a really low um f-stop at like 1.2 where you can see that literally the only thing basically in focus is like that sort of front floral shot, and I feel like it still does a really good job at being able to like detect what's going on even with those sort of blurry moments. But images like this, for example, this it's going to do an even better job because it's so contrasted. So if you are shooting images like like this or versus the other one I just showed you. I think it's really cool to be able to note that within this new update, we can really see these separations and edit them to how we would like separately. I also was playing around with this image with this update, so it's detecting the landscape and we can see that it'll literally like, I think that's so cool that it'll pick up the little like lily pads and we can really dive into that. So I think we'll play around with this one. I mean, unless someone in the chat too also wants to, they see an image down here that they would like me to play around with, I can definitely go for that. Um, but again, this was shot in RAW, so we're able to really um, bring up the exposure a bit without ruining the image too much. And if we need, we can always denoise it. But just sort of bringing up the exposure and the contrast, bringing down the highlights a bit. I feel like this image itself is not the most exciting, but I think an edit can really push this one along because there is a lot of like pops of color with those little like lily pads and stuff. I feel like the first thing I want to do is sort of increase those sort of blues and make this a little bit more sort of like inviting in a way. Um, and we also don't like, I mean, we will get into the masking, but it is, I guess, just good to note as well that when you are increasing different colors, like obviously we're selected on the blue, so it's only going to select that. And that can almost act as its own mask in a way because we're only selecting those blues within that image. So bringing in some more of that teal color and going through with more of those green lily pads. I feel like we want to really emphasize that green there. I feel like this little like thing in the corner is kind of annoying me, so we can go in and try to generative fill that out and see what it sort of gives us. And a lot of the time when I am, and again, I think it did such a great job there. Um, a lot of the time when I am editing, I will use a sort of trackpad, and that's, I feel like, maybe especially within Photoshop, because I love the idea of being able to sort of paint over my images once again. But for this, like, we're just able to do this on the fly. These are also things we can like easily do on mobile, which we're gonna get into as well if we have some time. So we just cropped in that image. I feel like that's looking way better. There was some sort of distractions, but let's go back to this sort of landscape mask and play a little bit more with maybe the water here. Um, and sort of bring through maybe some more saturation as well. And of course, we could do that by selecting the blues, but I feel like within a mask, you just have way more control. You know, you can be able to increase the exposure, the contrast, the little things I'm playing around with. Um, and then we'll go back to um, select our little lily pads here,
It's
add that
so
mask as
cool
well.
that it manages to get all of the edges of the lily pad. I haven't seen that an example like quite like this one, so it's cool to see
Oh,
how well it
cool.
does.
Yeah, I was trying to find an image that really separates the two, you know? And I think that's really fun. Um, because I feel like obviously they're in your human eye, they're sort of separate, but you're not almost expected a program to like know that. So I feel like that's super fun.
And I can't even imagine how tedious it would be to try to draw a manual mask of all of the edges of those
Oh
lily
my
pads. So
gosh. Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's I guess too why I'm like a little bit more tedious with some things because I know that a program like Lightroom is able to compensate for things like that. So I know when I take an image like in the past I would create these crazy I would take a bunch of images around an image and then composite them together and I feel like with all these updates it's like it's saving me so much time that I can spend more time within doing the things that I like with an image and that's usually just playing around with um we can also go in here and sharpen that up. Okay, and then I think it would be sort of cool to create a sort of linear gradient here because there is some sort of highlights happening at the top of the screen. And for me, a big part of also when I'm editing is sort of being able to take what's happening in an image and sort of increase that further. And that's where I get a lot of also my inspiration, I guess, from is from things that are already happening. So we can just go in and like create that sort of radial gradient here. And of course, the best part about these masks is we can always go back. We can play around again with this or the entirety of the image, and we can just be really, again, I feel like I keep saying tedious, but that is just like, I guess, the word of the day for me and how I edit. But again, we can increase some of that. I feel like that's starting to look really nice. Um, and increase the contrast of that sort of highlight that's coming in. And if we want, we could also make it a little bit like more warmer. I don't know if that's necessarily the vibe, but we have the option to. Um, like I feel like we're going into this sort of like moodier territory with that, which I kind of love. But yeah, I feel like that's looking really cool. Maybe increase the saturation just a little bit more on there and go back to um our original. And I kind of also again like I feel like when I am editing, I'm almost just like exploring. Like I'm just like, what else can we do with this image? And we could take it back to some of these presets. And of course, I feel like those will sort of um take away some of the work that we've necessarily done. That's why I tend to, what I'll do is I'll like save an image from like a base and then sort of apply different presets. But I think a great way to get inspiration also is being able to, um, look at these presets and I feel like this is giving, like, I just love how this is looking for some reason. And so again, just playing around. Um, what else can we do? We can go through back to some of our portraits, I think, or maybe we can edit a sunflower. You guys can let us know too, but I think I'm gonna go with this just because I know summer's on its way and I just sort of want to be able to take images like this that feel sort of like free in a way and just remind me of summer. Just we're gonna crop in a little bit and center that sunflower. And a lot of the time I'll actually sometimes I'll crop last in a way, but um when sometimes it's just all over the place for me. Nothing is ever super consistent, but let's go through the presets here and find one that sort of fits this vibe. I think we want to go with something that's a little bit brighter, a little bit saturated, and then we can play off that. And I feel like this will be an easy, we start off with the hard, with the little like lily pads and Lightroom knowing the difference, but I feel like this is a little bit of an easier one to be able to differentiate because we have that sky. Um, but I feel like we can maybe we'll go with Solarize. I feel like that, and these are just presets that either I have made or some of my friends have made. I feel like I love being able to talk with my friends about different presets and being able to share each other's and so a lot of these are sort of my friends along with mine. But I think we're gonna go with this because it just feels very, it almost feels like vintage, but I don't want to do it too much. So just adding a little bit so we can play off the curves from there. I feel like that's starting to look nice. And then we can go ahead and it's definitely looking dark. So we want to increase that exposure, bring in some of that contrast. And I feel like different images call for like a different edit. I don't know about you, but like I feel like when it when there's an image that's like this, it's just crazy how different presets will look completely different on um, other images. And I think that's why I love being able to almost be that explorer and go through and really get the most we can out of our photos. Let's go back on over to landscape and see how we can really separate the two. And again, I feel like this is just going to do a really, yeah, like the sky is immediately like, yes, we know that's a sky. We can go through and increase that sort of, I do like how you can see some of the clouds, so I don't want to completely um, overexpose the sky, but we do want to maybe increase the highlights a bit here and maybe make it a little bit more cooler to sort of combat the warmth of the sort of sunflowers. And then we can go in and we can pick now some of that there for the actual sunflowers and create two sort of totally different um, elements to work off of. And I sort of love that idea because we can, if we want, we can make this look like super stormy and like scary if we wanted. But I feel like I want to go for more of a, like a summery vibe. So increasing the exposure and bringing more warmth, I feel like is what I'm aiming for within this edit. And then we can go and again and affect that overall image once more here.
Folks in the
Um,
chat are
yeah.
loving this. Robert says
Oh,
he
cool.
loves how you paint with light.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it feels sometimes like that's what I'm doing in a way. It's funny because I did get my start within art by painting, so I didn't really pick up a camera until I think I was like a teenager, maybe like 17, 18. But before that, I've always been into like art, always taking painting classes, I was taking like ceramics before photography, so I feel like it's obviously never too late to start, like you can really start whenever you want. And especially if you maybe come from an art background or something, it makes it almost that much easier because, when you're painting, you're drawing, you're always looking at certain things like composition and colors without even almost knowing it sometimes. So it's really fun to be able to sort of bring through um, some of my background of painting and I feel like within using other tools like the color mixer brush, sometimes I love implementing that into my workflow and really blending things into one another. And yeah, I love that everyone's process is so different within coloring and editing skin, and we can all sort of learn from each other within photography because I feel like that's, that's what it's all sort of about. But um, again, as you can see, I'm literally just going through and being really specific with my adjustments. But I think I want to take it back to some of those portraits as well. And I also just love the idea of jumping around. Like I don't, sorry if it's like a little too chaotic, but I think that's just real in terms of like how I edit. Like sometimes I'll go through a day and edit just one photo, or maybe I'm editing a whole set of like 60 in a day. Like sometimes it fluctuates. Um, but this is a fun image I wanted to sort of edit because there is, I don't want to say a lot wrong with this image, but there's a lot that we can like do to make it better. I think that may be a better way to say it. First off, we can go ahead and I feel like this would look really cool with the sort of square crop, and we can already get that sort of background. We can also generative fill that sort of those edges, but I also feel like this could be a really cool shot for Instagram or something. So I feel like a square crop would make this image look really nice. And I feel like this is a great image that we can use for masking. So it does an amazing job at just like detecting her. So what we're gonna do though is detect the background as its own thing because again, there's a lot of wrinkles within the backdrop and there's a lot of wrong like shadows that are happening. I think this was almost like a test image that I shot, but I think this is a great example for how we can like build on it. So say this was a test image, maybe some things I would do differently within going to shoot this. I would say it's definitely a pretty flat image to start off with. So I feel like I would add a sort of key light on a better key light onto our model. And I would sort of maybe black out the curtains of the studio to sort of be in full control of the light. Um, I always like to sort of separate in terms of lighting, like separate my subject from the background lighting. So we can light the background in a whole totally new way and then light the foreground, the subject, completely separate. And then I think that's just how I like to look at it, like really simply is just focus on our subject and how they're lit, and then focus on the background, how that's lit. And then from there, we can add in really fun things like key lights and side lights, or not key lights, but just like a rim light or something. But what we could do here is just go through and sort of um, play a little bit with that sort of background to get those wrinkles sort of out of the way. And we can use little tools like maybe decreasing the sharpness and tools that you would normally think to like, you would only want to sharpen an image a bit, but I feel like these little tools are really helpful within different sort of images like this, where there's a lot that's sort of going wrong in a way. But let's go ahead and select her as the subject that we can really play around with here. And just boosting her a little bit from that background. Um, and I think that another just fun thing about photography is being able to take an image that you might not necessarily like and being almost able to like save it. And that's why a lot of the times when I'm shooting, I have to always almost remind myself that I have to be like, okay, you're gonna like this when you get home later and you can play with little things. You might not like it while on location, but when you're able to, increase little temperature adjustments and things like that. Like I know I'm gonna end up liking it. So I always try to shoot some images even though if I'm not loving it sort of in that moment, if that makes sense. Um, but yeah, we can go back to maybe the overall image itself and sort of play around with this and just getting the colors exactly how I like it. I always opt for a sort of like warmer temperatured image, and I think that's just a personal preference. Like if you wanted to go the cool route, you could, but I don't know why. I love how those warmer um, temperatures sort of look. But from here, I feel like we edited a few images, so I did want to start by going now to Lightroom Mobile. And I don't know about
Awesome.
you guys, but I think for me, I love the idea of being able to sort of edit my images on my laptop, but then it sometimes looks completely different on my phone. I think it's just maybe um it could be as simple as the fact that my phone is like smaller. Like sometimes it just feels different. And I also that's why I suggest looking at and editing images differently in different types of lighting. And I think a big proponent of that is again just literally transferring your photo to your phone. So I'm gonna go ahead and um, share my phone screen with you. And as you can see, this is sort of um, some of the images that I have uploaded. And I did sort of, I connected these different albums to the cloud. So the really cool part about this is that we can literally see the adjustments I made just before, like on this image, how I sort of cropped in. You can see those changes already, and it doesn't take too long, which I love. But the really cool part about this is I feel like, especially from me living in New York City, like I sometimes walking around on the go. I'm like on the subway, maybe the subway's delayed for like 40 minutes and I just want to like continue to edit. I can kind of pick up where like left off, which is really cool and still be able to edit um my raw image. So I'm just kind of going in and being again tedious, bringing through some of that warmer temperature to this image. And again, like this just feels sometimes nice. I don't know how to explain it, but sometimes I'm in the mood to edit on my desktop, and sometimes I just want to be like holding my phone. Um, and I love the fact that I can decide and just going through and I almost feel like again when I go to edit those images the next day, it almost sometimes feels like a different person. So I'm like fixing what I did yesterday. I'm like, why did you do that? But I think that's just all a part of the process and getting an image to sort of look exactly how you would like it. And I think that's the best part is, you're deciding how you want these images to look. Um, and even on look like on mobile, we're still able to get those like little things like these recommended presets and also my presets that have um, shifted over. And I didn't need to do anything different. Like I didn't need to upload these separately. The really cool thing about Lightroom is that it just sort of like syncs within that sort of cloud. So I'm able to see all of my, all of my presets here. And even if you're taking like little behind the scenes photos or little iPhone photos, not all the images I'm editing all day, every day are like super professional, high quality raw images like this. Like sometimes I just want to throw a little story of like my coffee on my Instagram story, and I can still go through and use these presets that I made and I love um and I feel like also when you start to craft presets, you start to almost vision them in your head and know what will look good on certain images, which is just like I feel like it just comes with being getting further into photography and editing. And so sometimes I know the exact preset in mind, but other images it's really fun to play around with. And for this one example, like this one has a lot of grain to it, and like maybe normally I wouldn't opt for something like that, but I think it kind of looks cool here. And of course, we can go in and like fix that. We don't have to keep the grain or anything. Um, we can, bring that down a little bit. But it's again all up to you. And we can go back and let's see if some of those landscapes, yeah, so our landscape photos also sort of transferred as well. So those changes that you just saw me make are brought across mobile, which is really cool. And even again, seeing this on my mobile, I'm like, I feel like the crop is and the straightening is a little bit weird. So going and again, I just made the smallest adjustment that literally no one would notice, but I notice and I know you guys notice as well, which is the fun part. I always like see people post like which photo should I share, which edit should I share, and like to anyone walking around would be like these are literally the same photo, but to us like we swear they're different, which is like the funny part about um photography. But from here also what we can do is I mean I also love the idea of being able to just like zoom in like this maybe if you're creating um a sort of set of images that all look sort of cohesive together, being able to just literally do that. But what we could do is we can also share our image, and we can um, save it to our device. We can share it on Instagram. And this is a great way to just like get the ball moving within posting because I feel like a lot of the times I will sort of um, edit my image and then like it will just sit there for a while. So even the fact that I could just like go right to Instagram and ignore the like iPhone camera roll sort of mess is really streamlined for me. But for me, I always just sort of will pick the largest image and quality size, and at least for posting to Instagram, I feel like a lot of people will sort of ask or comment sort of how I go about the sort of export process, and I just sort of like don't do anything special. I just do it at the highest quality and will sharpen my images a little bit more as well.
Hey, Brandon.
Yeah,
This is all amazing. We are butting up on the end of time.
amazing.
So I was hoping maybe you could just quickly recap any highlights and then share again where people can find you before we all head out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but yeah, you can find me at Brandon Woelfel on Instagram. And yeah, thank you guys so much for joining along. I feel like you got a little bit more insight into my Lightroom process. Again, just a lot of tedious little notes, but I think that's the fun that comes within photography.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. There's
Yeah,
great
thank you
Lightroom
guys.
content coming up all day, so come back for another stream soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.